Hello, one and all. Greetings. My name is Cooliex, the Twilight Dragon, and I want to do a nice little tutorial series to help out people in World of Warcraft. Um, so World of Warcraft is an MMO, and for those who don't know, that stands for Massively Multiplayer Online, where basically you make a character and you level up said character, get them awesome gear, and work together with people to beat dungeons and fight monsters, all that great cool stuff. Here is Cooliex, the very first character I created a long time ago. I used to be heavily addicted to WoW when I was younger, and I don't play it as much anymore these days, but I decided to I wanted to try to get back into it to help out new players, and because it's Warcraft is a great game. It really is, especially when you have good friends to play with. And now that I'm part of Greater Good Gaming, I really wanted to start again and see if I can like help out the new generation of people coming in and looking for like a nice group to play with. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's start from the beginning. I'm gonna break everything down as simple as I can. So after you set up your World of Warcraft account, the first thing you're going to need to do is pick a realm. There are four types of realms in World of Warcraft. There's the normal type realm, there's normal types, PvP, RP, and RP PvP. And I'll break them down. On a normal server, there are no special rules. As far as PvP, which stands for player versus player, when you go to certain areas of the world in the game, there's either going to be there's two factions, the Alliance and the Horde. There's either the area's either Alliance controlled, Horde controlled, or it'll be called contested, in which when you enter said area, you'll be automatically flagged for PvP combat. Or also, if you are Alliance and you go into a Horde-controlled area, you'll be flagged for PvP, but they won't, and vice versa. So PvP basically means that any player who's of the opposing faction can fight you. Now, normal servers, you don't have to worry about that unless you're in a specific area, like arena-type areas, where everybody's flagged for combat automatically, and those are really few and far between. But every other area, like the realms and stuff like that, where you know, oh, this is Horde control, this is Alliance control, you don't have to worry about that in a normal server, unless you purposely flag yourself for combat. You don't have to worry about that. Also, on normal type servers, from what I did some research, you can use any type of name you want when creating your character. PvP is the same exact type of server like normal, except that, as I said before, in the PvP server, there you have to be wary of the zones, and basically at any point in time, any person of the opposing faction, they can fight you if you're in a contested area or if you're in their type of area. PvP, I wouldn't usually recommend PvP servers until you're like actually pretty well versed with the game, because a lot of times what's going to happen, and I know this for sure because on PvP server, I have characters in the PvP server as well. It's hard to level up on PvP servers when you get to like a medium-sized level. The first few zones you like train in, they're your zones, so you don't have to worry about being attacked. When you start reaching the contested zones, that's when it gets a little more trickier, because a lot of times you have to worry about players who are higher leveled, but they're bored, and they will attack you. There's been so many times where me and my friend, we would just be questing, having a good time, and next thing you know, this is like a level, and we're like only like level 25 or level 30, and next thing you know, it's like this level 70 / level 80 person that just swoops down and just kills us for no reason. It does happen. And so a lot of times when you do a PvP server, you usually want to either A, try with a group, or B, have somebody who's higher level try with you, unless you don't mind getting killed a lot. Because sometimes what they'll do is they'll even camp your body, and it wastes a lot of time. So it was really frustrating to get there. You do eventually get higher up and stuff like that. It does pass, but like you have to be mindful that that can and probably will happen to you. So just be mindful of that when if you pick a PvP server. The RP server, back then, they used to be called PvE server, and basically that meant that there's no PvP at all, from what I can tell. I've never actually been on a PvE server before, but what I can gather is that there is no PvP at all in there. It's mostly just PvE stands for player versus event. So that usually means that you're only worrying about facing like computer generated enemies. You don't have to worry about any type of player versus player combat unless you're going to, like, you know, the battlegrounds and stuff like that to get honor points, which is like PvP currency to buy special gear. They changed it to RP server, and basically in RP servers, I did some research. It's basically you had to have an actual name, so you can't put like I like hot dogs 86 or something like that. That name won't fly. In an RP server, there's special rules where people on those servers are in character. I wish I did that in the past because I actually like RPing in games like this, because it's really fun when, you know, you have a persona and you make it up and stuff like that, and then you just, you know, make stories with that said character in a World of Warcraft setting. I'm considering making an RP character on the side, maybe, because I actually want to try it out, because I love RPing. It's really, really fun. I don't do it outside of the game, but I love doing it in game. It's really fun. So if you are looking towards maybe making a character and like actually, like, you know, making a story yourself and stuff like that, from the research I gathered, the RP servers are really, really nice. The players are much more nicer in there and everything like that, because it's more about you making a character and sticking to that character, and then everybody's much more cooler about it because you're basically making a story and not really worried about, like, you know, leveling up and stuff like that, unless that's your story, basically. And then the last one is the RP PvP, which basically combines the PvE aspect, but now you have the PvP rules. So basically now you have to worry about the zones and being in contested zones, and actually worry about fighting and stuff like that. So yeah, that's basically a quick rundown of the servers. Usually the safest one to start with is a normal server, and normal RP server. So let's get on down and make a server. So, what server should we go to? A lot of these are low population. I think we're gonna go to Ysera. Let's start with that one. Let's make one in here for our, you know, for our introduction here. So let's get started on things on this here on screen here. Now, as I said before, there are two factions. There's Alliance and there's the Horde. So these are the two factions that are basically warring against each other throughout the game. There's also a neutral one, Pandarian, on the bottom. When you do the Pandarian one, basically you're gonna do their starting area, and at the end of the starting area, you get to choose to be in the Alliance or Horde once you finish it. So there's that one. In the Alliance, you can be a human, a dwarf, a night elf, a gnome, a Draenei, or a worgen. Hey, thank you. In the Horde, you can be the orcs, the undead, tauren, trolls, blood elves, or goblins. It's actually kind of important which race you choose, because each race has like their own like racial this thing called racial what's the word I'm looking for? I guess like they have like racial traits that they can have that help them out. For example, I think like the humans have a special thing where they're better at commanding. No, that's undead I'm thinking about. Undead has a thing where they have better at commanding pets and stuff like that. So usually undead warlocks are pretty good or something like that. And gnomes are good at escaping traps and stuff. They have one where like they can escape traps easier, and they're better at engineering specs and stuff like that. So if you want to get into like an engineering, oh my god, my words are just like totally gone right now. If you want to get like into engineering, which is basically one of like the little side things you can do with creating things, a gnome will probably be good for you. You should also note that if you're playing this game with a friend, that almost all these guys start in different areas, but I will tell you who starts where. Humans start by themselves. Dwarves and gnomes start together in the same area. Night Owls and Draenei start near each other. The Draenei, they start in a crash landing, but eventually they take a boat to where the Night Owls are. So these two are pretty close together. Worgens start in a space way off by themselves, basically. So it's gonna be a while till you meet the other 5 here. So there. So basically, if you want to play with a friend and you're trying to meet up with them while you're playing together, you either want to pick the same class, the same gender, or oh god, I keep saying gender class. The same race is what I'm trying to say. You want to pick the same race, or pick a race that's going to be close together. That way you'll see each other. When I first played this game, I picked human and my friend picked night elf, and it was a long time until we could see each other because he was all the way in another continent. So it took a while for us to find each other, and that was like when we didn't even know how to play the game. Anyway, next you have the orcs and the trolls start near each other. The trolls start off on an island, and they eventually meet the orcs, which is not that far off. It's like really within the first like 5 or 10 levels, really. The undead start by themselves in another area. The Tauren start. Where did the Tauren start? The Tauren are sort of near the orcs and trolls, but they're like on the opposite side a little bit on the same continent. So they're not terribly far away from each other, but they're still pretty far. It'll still be a while till you find each other. They're gonna meet in like a central area once you get past like the first few starting areas. The Blood Elves start way off by themselves, but technically they're pretty close to... They're technically pretty close to undead, but they can't really get to them because there's a high level area between them. So it'll take a while till you get to them, but they're technically pretty close to each other once you finish your starting areas. And the goblins, like the Worgens, are way off by themselves in a different area. These two were added in a recent expansion, a couple expansions ago, and so they have a really big story. Quest line they have to go through before they join the Alliance and the Horde. And same thing with the Pandarians. They're also added in way later in their own expansion, and so they do same thing, big quest line and stuff like that. The last thing I want to go over in this video are the classes. Each different race can be different classes. There's not one class that can be all the races. I mean, there's not one race that can be all the classes. So basically, not only do you have to pick carefully what you want to be, but you also want to, like, you know, make sure you're picking the right race that can do the right class you want. I might do some more in-depth videos later just so you can know the more differences of the classes, but I can basically give you a quick you know, summary of what each class does. Warriors are, as it says right there, they can be tanks or melee damage. They're pretty good at they're basically your basic damage powerhouses. They can also tank too. They usually you can either spec them to dual wield weapons. You can have them do two-handed weapons, which they do the most damage when they do that, and they can do sword and shield when they can tank. They're pretty simple and stuff. They're pretty simple. They work with a rage system instead of like mana or something like that, and that basically builds up when you like fight things. So they're pretty cool. They're a pretty good class to start with if you when you're first starting the game, and they're pretty fun actually, surprisingly. I mean, they learn a lot of good spells and stuff like that. And with the newest expansion and like the new updates, you can switch between what specs you want to do instead of having to like fully commit to one spec, which is one of the things I actually like about the game now, that they changed that. Next you have Paladins. Paladins are super well versed. It's the first class I've ever played in this game, and I love the fact that I picked it. The Paladin can be a tank, healer, or damage dealer, so you can do all three. The Paladin comes in 3 different specs. They can be the holy. I think it's like a holy one spec when they're healing. When they're best at healing, they're great tanks. I love Paladins as a tank. They do really good tank damage. They're really good at holding a bunch of enemies on them, and being able to heal yourself is great to stay alive. And they also do pretty significant damage when you do them in a damage spec too. They mostly use maces and swords, I believe. And they can wear strong armor too, just like the warrior. Hunters are usually the most another fun class to play as. Hunters basically they can wear up to male, I think now. Yeah, I think they were a plate now. I believe. I don't know. I haven't played it in a long time. I'm not. I haven't been caught up on WoW in a long time, so you have to forgive me if some information is wrong. I'm just going by what I know from when I used to play. Hunters are basically, as you see, they're hunters. They can have pets, which basically makes them one of the most fun classes to play as. And they're mostly good for range damage. It says melee damage there too, but you usually don't. Most of their best moves require them to be at a distance. You don't really have hunters don't really have a lot of moves where they're like up close and personal fighting people. Hunters usually they can specialize in using traps, or using their ranged weapons, or making their pets stronger. Hunters are really fun because almost any beast you run into, any monster you run into the game that's kind of as a beast, you can train as a pet, including like really rare and elite monsters. So it's usually pretty fun to see what kind of like rare and unique pets you can get in the game. It actually get, even in like really like even in dungeons, like you can collect those pets as well. So hunters are really fun to play as. Just gotta make sure that most like like I said, their basic strength is when they're fighting at a distance, not like in your face. Now rogues, on the other hand, are purely melee damage. Rogues are they're really fun to play as well. I find rogues more fun to play as in the PvP instead of PvE. But then again, it's because I never really had a high level rogue before, and that's probably why. And I'm not really good. My problem is I'm not really good at damage dealing type class. Like I'm really good at either tanking or healing. I'm not really good at damage dealing, so that's why rogue is never one of the classes I actually got pretty good with. But rogues specialize in like being stealthy because they have moves where they can be invisible to players. They do great damage when they do back attacks and stuff like that. So they're really good to have with their damage and everything like that. If you have a good tank that can hold like the attention of an enemy, rogues can just keep attacking them from the behind and do a significant amount of damage. But like I said, they're basically really great in PvP as well because it's good to like just like sneak up on somebody and attack them when they don't expect it. Because they have a lot of good stuns and poisons and everything like that. So rogues are pretty awesome if you're into that. If you're into like having high amounts of damage. And especially if you plan to go the player versus player route. Priests. Now, I used to hate on priests a lot, but I actually love priests now. They're actually really fun. Priests can be healer or they can be damage dealers as well. Obviously, they're pretty great at healing, of course, but you can also build. They also have they can also reduce significant damage when you do this the Shadow Priest spec. And that's where they basically focus on like doing curses and things like that and damaging enemies as opposed to like just healing people all the time. So if you like healing, healer's basically the way to go. It's really simple to play and they're pretty fun. I like priests. The only downside to priests is I find it takes a long time to level them up by themselves. That could be just because I'm not good with the Shadow Priest, which is their damage dealer, but I just noticed that it takes a long time to level them up by themselves because they don't do a lot of damage alone. They're basically a good class to go with if you have a group because healing is, definitely, it's hard to do a dungeon without a healer. Duh. Now I gotta switch people here because the next person is Shaman. Shaman is kind of like the Paladin where they can do multiple things. A Shaman can be a healer, a range damage, or a melee damage. Shamans are also amazing. I also have a high level shaman who's a Turin. You can build a shaman to be a healer, just like a paladin. You can build them to be like a mage where they do lots of spells from a distance. And their spells are really great. I love like the fact that they have a spell interrupt spell. Basically, if you know an enemy is about to cast a spell, just one of the moves they can do, they can silence that person temporarily and just keep doing damage to them. And it can also be melee. They can also be melee attackers too. And another thing I like about shamans is that they can like imbue their weapons with like elements and stuff like that. So they do pretty good damage in my opinion. I think people usually do them as the mage spec because I think their melee damage is not as like strong as like somebody like other classes are. Another thing shamans are good at is they have these totems in the behind, as you can see there. They have totems that help like in battle. Most of them are like buff your team. Other ones can like summon elementals, which I think those are awesome. or or they can like attack enemies and stuff like that. Shamans are another one of those things I suggest that you maybe try a little bit later because it requires you to know a lot of stuff. But once you get comfortable with the game, Shaman's pretty fun too. Mage is basically damage dealing. That's all you're doing. I never had a high level mage. I plan to try to make one again. I think the highest mage I ever had was like level 30, but mages are fun too. Mages are basically mages. They cast magic from a distance. There's nothing really crazy you have to know about them really, but the only thing you do know that they can spec in 3 different forms of magic. They can do arcane, fire, or frost. Frost is usually good at like this thing called crowd control, which is good at like basically stuns and rooting people to specific areas and slowing them down. So frost is really good. Fire is basically like just pure explosive damage. Arcane, I don't know what Arcane does nowadays anymore. I remember Arcane used to be really good with like the magic missiles, which is like a good damage dealing move back in the day, but I don't know what Arcane does these days. I'll have to play a mage and find out what the Arcane does now. But yeah, mages are really good damage dealers. They're incredibly squishy though, so you gotta be just like Pierce. They're squishy. They can only wear cloth, so you gotta be a little careful with that. You definitely don't want to be like up in people's faces with you don't want to be up in people's faces when you're a mage, unless you're a frost one, which you can like freeze them and then back away and like hurt them from a distance. Next would be warlocks. Warlocks are fun. I love warlocks. I had a high level warlock as well. Warlocks are also damage dealing as well, but they're kind of like, I call them magic hunters basically. Not hunters as in they can well, actually no, that's a lie because later in the game they do get a spell where they can grab demons. But warlocks gain summons. The one you see behind us, the first one you get was the imp. They also get like the void walker, the succubus, the fell hunter, the fell guard. They basically get demonic pets that help them fight in battle, and they also have they have a special range of spells like sort of like mage. Warlocks are also really good at PvP. They have moves that they have a lot of moves that like poison people for a long period of time. They can also do straight damage too, so it's like whatever your kind of playstyle is, or you can focus on your pets. Usually people don't usually do that in PvP, but it's really good in like a PvE setting if you want to like focus, have your pet do most of the work while you like help cast spells from behind. Warlocks are pretty great. They're pretty dangerous. They're fun. They're really fun to play as. They're not that they sound difficult, but they're not really that difficult to play. I enjoyed the Warlock I had when I first played. I think the Warlock was the second character I ever made, and I really enjoyed them. I know undead Warlocks are really good to have. So you're looking at Warlock, I would say usually undead or human one would be a good one to go with too. The newest addition, well actually the newest one is Demon Hunter, but one of the newer ones was the Monk. Monks can be tanks, healer, or melee damage. I have not played a Monk for too long. I have a Pandarian Monk, and they're actually pretty fun from what I played with them. They can definitely tank, and I know they can do tanking and melee damage. I haven't seen much with the healer one because I haven't really played a monk healer, so I don't know if they're great at healing or not. I haven't played one, so I wouldn't be able to tell you. But basically, monks usually use like fist weapons and use their hands, and they kind of use staffs too to help them in combat as well. I think they can use swords as well, but even when they have swords, they don't use them in their hands. They just like hold it on their back while they're fighting with their fists. So if you want to like if you want to use kung fu while you're playing, there's your class right there. The next one is really fun to play as druids. Druids are really fun, but definitely one of the harder ones to play as. Druids can do everything: tank, heal, range, and melee damage. Basically, druids are a combination of almost all the classes from warlock to warrior. Basically, all the classes druids can basically do most of that stuff, except hunter, I believe, maybe. But druids, they can shapeshift into animals, And each animal that you shapeshift to usually is a different kind of class. So they have the bear form, which are like warriors. They can tank and do charging and stuff like that. They have the cat form, which is like the rogue, where they can sneak and do focus on DPS. They're like mages and priests because they can cast spells from a distance and also heal. I know back in the day, druids were the strongest healers in the game, even stronger than priests, who are basically meant for just healing. But druids have really good healing spells, so they're really amazing at doing their job. Definitely one of the hardest classes to play as, because it requires basic knowledge of the other classes, sort of, in order to know what you're doing. But they're still one of the best classes to play as in the game if you're ever interested in trying them out. I don't have I don't have Demon Hunter because that's the newest class. That's the newest expansion. I have not played it yet. But in order to have this one, you had to have at least a level 70 in order to get one. I believe they're just, yeah, this says right there, they're tanking melee damage, so I assume they're really fun damage dealers. And the last one I have, ooh, Death Knights are the next one. I believe you have to have at least a level 60 to have a Death Knight. That was from the one of the early expansions as well. Death Knights they can be tanks or melee damage as well. They use a lot of frost moves. They can also be kind of like hunters, and those kind of warlocks. They can have like a zombie. They can have like a zombie follow them around as well to help them in battle too. Death Knights are pretty fun as well. Everybody, they're pretty freaking awesome. They can imbue their weapons too, which makes them pretty sweet. Fun class to play as. The only thing is that you start at like level 56 with them or something like that. So you don't really get a lot of time to learn how to play as them. And like I said, you have to have at least level 60, I think, before you can use them anyway. So it's not like you can use them right away. But yeah, that is the basics of what you need to know. Let's just, yeah. So yeah, when you pick a character, you can just pick their skin color, their face that they use and they play, their hairstyle, hair color, facial hair, and then with the other ones, like the more fun ones, you can change like the horns and stuff like that. With the undead, you can change how gruesome you want them to look with different features, like they can have no jaw at all. You can go that far if you want to, or a messed up jaw. So it's pretty fun, the customizable aspect. But that is the basic of basics I can tell you just from before you start off. So I hope this was informative. I hope it helps you out, and hopefully I'll make some more that will help you in the future. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you have a fun time playing World of Warcraft, or hopefully this has helped you have an interest in playing it. This is Cooliex the Dragon signing off.